Have you ever had that sinking feeling when you know you have to have one of those corrective conversations with your employee and you're worried maybe about coming off too harsh or the awkwardness of it or maybe what they're going to say back to you, and it just makes you feel incredibly uncomfortable? But what if I told you there was a way to turn those dreaded, icky, corrective conversations into opportunities for growth for both you and your employee? Imagine leaving that conversation not with a knot in your stomach, but feeling like you've genuinely helped someone improve. That's what I'm going to show you today. Welcome to the Surviving to Thriving podcast that helps women leaders in nonprofits get out of survival mode and thrive in both leadership and life. I'm your host, leadership development coach Kathy Archer, and I help women leaders enjoy impactful leadership. I know from personal experience, I've been that leader. I've had those achy conversations. Some of them have gone not great at all. Some of them, though, I figured out how to turn those conversations around and turn them into growth opportunities. I'm going to teach you a 3-step framework to help you have non-icky corrective conversations. Let's get started. As a nonprofit leader, your job is to take your people from where they are to their potential. And often we spend most of our time just head down, dealing with stuff that's happening, popping up, the fires, the crisis, the emergencies, and we never actually look at our employees' potential and grow them and help them reach that potential. But that's our job. Our job is to grow the people under us. And far too often we're having occasional or random chats when we cross paths, but rarely are we intentional about growing and developing them. And that's what I want you to keep thinking about is, how do I intentionally develop my people, take them from where they are now to where they can possibly be if they were their best selves? Let's first talk about the 3 different types of conversations that we often have with our employees, or should have, what the purpose is, and we get confused by them sometimes. So I want you to understand the 3 different types so that you ensure that you're doing all 3. And cut yourself some slack here, because you've probably not been taught this. Most of us move from frontline into leadership without the training and support to do the work. So if you don't know this, don't beat yourself up. That's where we get into that feeling like there's something wrong with us and we should have known better. No, you probably weren't taught this. Grab a note paper and take some notes. Just tune in and start to learn how to be a better leader. So the first type of conversation that we often have is the teaching conversations. And that often starts at the beginning. Here's how to do the job. Here's where you find the files. Here's how we want the reporting to be done. Here's what happens when something goes wrong. It's all of that teaching. And we do a lot of that teaching in the beginning to make sure they know how to do their job. The problem is sometimes we stop there and we often need to reteach how to do the job. Maybe something's changed. Maybe that first orientation, they were so overwhelmed that they missed part of it. Or maybe they've just gotten lazy, or the culture of the program they're in has gotten lazy. So sometimes we need to come back and say, hey, here's what I need you to do. You may have missed some of this, or you may have just not thought it was important because nobody checked in, but I need you to do X, Y, Z. Those are the teaching conversations. The next type of conversation is a coaching conversation, and we often call corrective conversations coaching conversations. They are different. Let me tell you the difference. Coaching is helping them figure out, again, where they are, what's happening, and how they can improve. And we're not teaching them. We're not telling them what to do. We're pulling it out from within them. Once they've been on the job a while, once they've got their feet on the ground, you can help them go, so you don't know the answer to this. Where would you look? And you don't tell them. You help them figure out what they need to do. Who would you ask for help? If this goes on, where would you look? What would you do? How would you figure it out? And you pull that within them. Maybe, what did you do the last time this happened? And that coaching conversation, you're asking questions that are pointing forward. Again, you've probably not been taught this skill, so don't beat yourself up. In my membership site, the Training Library, I teach a whole webinar around coaching conversations so you can develop those skills. Because if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, you're feeling like you don't know what you're doing because nobody's taught you. You don't have the competence. And competence comes before confidence. So as I'm going through this, don't feel bad that you don't know this. Just recognize that's something I need to learn. Where can I learn that from? So we've got teaching conversations, coaching conversations. Now we're moving into corrective conversations. Corrective conversations are more focused on immediate discussions addressing specific issues or behaviors that are hindering their or team performance. So corrective conversations need to be done immediately, as soon as you possibly can. They need to be specific, and you need to address what's going on and why it's a challenge. Corrective conversations are often started or initiated when something happened. There's a report, there's an incident, and we need to get on it right away. The goal is to resolve that, to figure it out, to prevent it from happening again. Again, let's talk about the difference between coaching and corrective. Coaching conversation, I'm saying, hey, you're doing this okay, but how can I help you do it better? How can I help you excel at this? How can we help grow your skills in this area? You're okay. There's nothing wrong. Whereas a corrective conversation is saying there is something wrong. Something's not going well. Something's being done that potentially has a risk attached to it or harm attached to it, or already has done that. And we're dealing with the consequences of that. That's when you bring in a corrective conversation. If something's gone wrong and you're trying to fix it, it's not coaching. It is correction. And this is where we start to get all that jumbling in our tummy, and we start to feel the tension in our shoulders, and the thoughts race, and we put the conversation off, and we try and figure it out, and then we feel icky about it, and we're like, we wish somebody else would do it. Here's a 3-step framework to help you ditch the ickiness and feel more confident going into those conversations and have the outcome be a growth opportunity rather than that person leaving feeling like they just got beat up. So the first step is to plan with purpose. Before you go into that conversation, be intentional. Get ready for that conversation. And remember, I just said you don't want that person to come out of that conversation feeling like they've been beat up. Then what do you want? This is part of that planning. What do you want that person to feel? And I want you to attach feeling words to this plan. I want them to feel supported. I want them to feel engaged. It could be that they feel a little bit bad, like, ooh, kind of embarrassed or guilty. Those feelings like, I shouldn't probably do that. That's not horrible to feel like that. That's pulling in their moral compass and saying, hey, I know you're a better person. I know you can do better. But you also want them to feel supported and encouraged and feel like they've got some ideas or strategies for moving forward. Feel like they've got your support. Feel like they've got your desire in them to see their best selves. You want to pull that out of them. That's what's going to help them leave that meeting feeling engaged and motivated rather than beat up. Then I want you to step back and go, what strengths am I going to use? Who am I when I'm at my best? As a leader, when I show up fully and strongly and confidently, how am I showing up? What are my strengths? Identify those and figure out how you can use those in this conversation. That's really going to help you lay that groundwork for how that conversation is going to go. Identify your triggers. What might trigger me? If they start to cry, that might upset me. Maybe if they get defensive, that might upset me. Maybe if they shut down, that might upset me. Maybe if they blame somebody else, what might happen that's going to trigger you? This is where your emotional intelligence comes in, and you need to be that strong leader. It's when you go, here's where I might get triggered, but here's what I'm going to do so that when that trigger comes, I manage my emotions. Emotional intelligence is the ability to both recognize and manage your emotions. Just because you feel angry, experience anger does not mean you need to express anger, or you get to choose how you express that anger. And you can, as a leader, express anger. There's nothing wrong with expressing frustration or anger or irritation. It's how you do it. And when you plan those triggers, you're going to be better able to manage your emotions in that moment. So plan with purpose. Be intentional before that conversation. Plan the outcomes you want, including what emotions are involved, and identify your strengths that are going to help you get that outcome you desire. And then take a couple deep breaths. It's hard work, but you can do it. Second part of getting into these icky conversations and having them come out as a growth opportunity is to connect and then correct. Do not jump into the conversation and immediately hit them with what's wrong. Connect first. This is another human being in front of you. They have feelings. They're got lots going on in their life. You maybe don't know the half of what happened yesterday or this morning or last week. Connect to them as a person. This does not mean you have to have 15 minutes of, hey, how's things going in your life? What's going on? But just acknowledge, hey, how are you doing? The other thing you can do is use a skill that I call vulnerable narration. You can jump into the conversation and say, hey, how you doing? And then you can be like, wait a minute, that's a silly conversation or question for me to be asking right now. We both know this is awkward. And what you do is you kind of narrate what's happening down here. So you and the other person are down here. You're both feeling icky and uncomfortable and awkward, and it feels weird. And you step up as not just this person, but a sort of an outer body experience. And you're like, hey, this is what's going on for us. This is an uncomfortable conversation. Neither of us want to have it. And I just want you to know that I feel on your side too. I've been through these conversations. I've experienced being reprimanded for something and it doesn't feel good. I'm going to try and make this as positive as I possibly can. And so you kind of step out of that and explain what's going on. That's connecting to them before you continue. Then jump into the feedback. Don't beat around the bush. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't try and fluff it up. We spend too much time trying to soften the blow or hit at them directly, depending on your personality. And I want you to figure out how to set the information down in front of them without slamming it. There's a quote by Annie Lamott that says you can cut with the sword of truth or you can point with the sword of truth. We want you to point. Here's what happened. Here's the outcome of it. Here's what I need you to change. Matter of factly, not emotionless. It's not that you want to be cold and cut off, but you want to be clear. Brene Brown says clear is kind. And when you are clear, not adding all of the extra bits of conversation and anecdotes and stories, just being, here's the thing, here's what happened, here's what we need to do, here's a correction, and just let it go from there. You don't have to say it over and over and over again. Clear is kind. Say it, be clear, and then move on. But the moving on doesn't end there. And this is the third part of the corrective conversation that's really important. Again, we don't like these conversations, so we have them and then we quickly I don't want to talk about that again and just pretend it's not there. You actually do need to address it again. The third step is called nurture and nudge. So you are going to check in every once in a while. You're going to give them those little nudges that they need to make sure they're doing what they need to do. But you're not doing it in a way where you're coming behind and kicking them in the butt. You're doing it in a way where you stand beside them, figuratively, hand on their shoulder, and say, hey, how's it going? Do you need any help? What's going on? And feel in your body, in your mind, that this is an individual who's here, but they have the potential to be here. And my job is to help them get there. And if I just keep stomping on them and telling them what they're doing wrong, they're not going to be motivated. They're going to be motivated when they see you care about them and you're invested in them. And that's going to build that connection. That's going to build the engagement, and it's going to help them grow and learn from this experience. And so as a result, what started out as an icky conversation turns into this beautiful relationship where you're mentoring and coaching and supporting them and developing them, and you're going to see them grow. It starts with a mindset shift. I have a problem to fix, or I have a person to grow. And you get to decide how you want to approach this. But let me tell you, when you take this challenge as a person who you want to grow, you'll feel differently, they'll feel differently, and the outcome will be way different. So we've got teaching conversations, coaching conversations, and corrective conversations. Learn how to do these, and you as a leader will feel more confident. Remember, corrective conversations do not have to be icky. By planning with purpose, connecting before you continue, and then nurturing your team after, you can turn those tough talks into growth opportunities. If you found this helpful, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and share with someone else in your network who might benefit from this. Don't forget to leave a comment below about what you learned from this. I always love to hear from people, and I want to support you and help you in any way I can. And if you need more help, head over to kathyarcher.com/library, and you will find my membership site with oodles of training that you don't have to ask your boss for at an affordable price to help you grow and develop and be your best self as you lead your nonprofit and enjoy the rest of your life. Go make the rest of your day awesome.